In X-Men number 11, Magneto takes center stage as the Cotati alien invasion from the pages of Marvel's Empyre event comes for Krakoa. The mutant nation of Krakoa is under siege again, and it's time for the Master of Magnetism to shine as their hero. Today I'll answer how Krakoa is responding to their many invasions, why the data pages in this issue focus on power combos, and what's the summoner doing on Krakoa, and who's he talking to? How does this connect to Ten of Swords? Hey, I'm Dave Busing. You're listening to Krakin Krakoa number 79, a review of X-Men number 11 and all the theories and predictions that will build within as we head towards Ten of Swords. If you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel or podcast, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Spoilers for discussed comics will follow. Writer Jonathan Hickman, artist Lionel Francis Hugh, colors Sonny Gao, and letters Clayton Cowles for this comic. Exodus begins telling us tales of Magneto during the Empyre invasion. I continue to be mildly concerned that so many parents are content to leave their children around Exodus's cult campfires, but such is life on Krakoa. It makes sense, too, that Exodus would be kind of this narrator reveling in Magneto's heroism that's to come this issue, given his status as a 90s acolyte of the Master of Magnetism and his close affinity for the life lessons of Magneto's mutant superiority philosophy throughout time. I'm also definitely interested here in the dichotomy of Exodus condemning Magneto's longtime daughter, Scarlet Witch, with this same group of kids before heaping savior praises upon the man himself. I think it was back in X-Men number 7, the Crucible issue, when we saw this exact same framing of Exodus gathering the kids around the campfire and telling them of, the great pretender, Wanda Maximoff. I don't think that parallel is an accident here. I continue to be interested in how the threads connecting Magneto and Wanda will be explored, given the importance that has been placed on both. Throughout X-Men number 11, though, we get a big-time Magneto Warrior showcase. He puts on the old red and purple armor, which appears to be the war costume, and sets out to defend Krakoa from, again, the alien invasion of Cotati. In X-Men number 10, going back to last issue, we saw Vulcan sort of fighting off some of the Cotati on the moon and ultimately unknowingly sort of sending them to Krakoa by mentioning it. In the pages of Empyre, the Cotati aliens, they are these plant life beings that want to wipe out all meat or sentient human life in efforts to gain their own vengeance. But that's it's not that important, honestly, to be reading along with Empyre. So the data page this issue looks into the strategies of the Krakoan captains, led by the Captain Commander Cyclops, and including Magic, Bishop, and Gorgon. I quite like that they're taking security a lot more seriously. Again, this is something I've talked about mostly in X-Force, that Krakoa seems to get invaded way too easily. I think it's important for them to begin planning for this as opposed to just taking it lying down. This is the second time in the last month or so, too, that we've seen reference to Monet's efforts on X-Corps, which I find pretty cool. I did a bit of a dive into X-Corps when they were first introduced. I think it was issue Empyre X-Men number 2 of the mini there, but we're seeing Hickman kind of just, basically just, it's taken as a given now that this X Corporation, a Grant Morrison concept for back in New X-Men, is that's out there, right? And they're taking some strategies that they have around building up various islands around Krakoa, about creating evacuation protocols, so that, they are not just constantly getting assaulted and needing to go through resurrection protocols. I think it's important that Krakoa can be defended and not so easily assailed for a number of reasons, even with resurrection. I think one thing that a takeaway of House of X and Powers of 10 can be for some fans is, well, why do we care? They can just be resurrected. Remember, the 5 here are under heavy duress. Resurrecting mutants is a burden in the sense of time and resources, and it's not something they can take for granted. So the Quorum report goes on to describe the benefits and possibilities of various mutant power set combinations. We see this idea applied within the narrative as Magneto seeks to gather Magma and Iceman for a plan to wipe out the Cotati invaders. It's nice for me in particular to see Magneto and Amara having a very small moment, since Magneto was Amara and the New Mutants headmaster one time back in that late 80s X-Men, post Uncanny X-Men number 200, when Magneto actually becomes headmaster of the Xavier Institute. So this idea that he kind of gave her a homework assignment of finding a volcano or a source that she could use off Krakoa was a nice little throwback to that and their relationship. So either Hickman here is plotting for X-Justice from the creators of Marvel vs. Capcom, or he's laying the groundwork, more likely, for Chimeras from Moira's Ninth Life. I think that's why we're talking about power combination so much. There's an element of just playing comic book fun that comes with power combos. From what I remember, this is like the entire gameplay premise of Ultimate Alliance 2. But for mutants, it's also clearly a part of the big picture. I'd note too that in the data pages, the Omega level mutant combination report is redacted, right? We know Omega level mutants are exceedingly important to Krakoa, exceedingly important to mutant kind. They're the most important natural resource on the island. The ways their powers can be combined with others on Krakoa is likely one of the most important things as we start to build to, okay, are we talking about resurrecting mutants with Magneto's powers integrated? Are we talking about resurrecting mutants with Omega level powers, right? What if Krakoa gets to a place where you can resurrect everyone with Omega level abilities? Now they become nearly, you cannot assault their island anymore, right? They're too powerful. So I think we're laying the scene for that right now. We're laying some of the groundwork for all that. But at this point in time, it's mostly just like, hey, how can existing mutant power sets play together for some very fun action, which is cool, which is good. So I think it's interesting both in that, it connects on a thematic level, but also just in terms of the action as well. So Magneto, of course, though, is our main character in this issue. He dumps like all of the world's satellites on the Cotati big bad boss in 2 pages of like Watchmen callback meets fairly successful humor. It's pretty good. And, basically we get to see Magneto just being this. Jonathan Hickman writes villains very, very well. I think it is one of his best skills as a Marvel Universe writer. He did this with Doctor Doom extremely successfully across the pages of Fantastic Four and even into New Avengers and then Secret Wars. He's doing something quite similar with Magneto, just sort of the arrogance and just that like unflinching cool that he has in all situations comes through very clearly. This is also like the best situation Magneto's ever been a part of. Nothing has suited him more than the Krakoa era. Even when he was ruling the island nation of Genosha, he had his own island of mutants to lord over. He never had the full backing of mutant kind like he does now, or children literally chanting his name in joyous rapture around a campfire. But for all the fun of seeing him get this moment, I can't help but think this is Hickman setting him up for a fall. I definitely think like Magneto is going to have a long way down potentially. I probably that is going to be true for many of the main players in the Dawn of X. I think Professor X and Moira in particular, what is going to be their downfall? Like the question right now is like, what about Krakoa isn't going to work? And right now, again, like Magneto's in the best position he's ever been, but he's kind of in a way the third wheel as part of the mutant triumvirate, and I wonder if that is something that's going to come back to bite him heavily down the line. We're talking long-term planning there. So the issue actually begins with the first appearance of the Summoner since X-Men #2, the child of Apocalypse's first war and a child of Arakko. Now, there's not a ton in terms of like, it's very vague, the Summoner's appearance here. The things that we learn is, I guess, one, Arakko has its own language just like Krakoa that I don't yet have a translation card for, so I super need one of those. Also, two, I'm just going to say, don't play games with the creepy kid you just found sitting in the woods. A rock slide shows up here, and I'm going to talk about him in a second, but he calls him, hey, this weirdo's just sitting here, and then decides to play the game the kid says is about weakness. This has me very, very concerned. Very concerned for good old rock slide. I'm worried that whatever game he's now engaged in with the Summoner is going to cost him way more than he probably anticipated. We don't know the rules of the Summoner's kind of morality and quote-unquote games he might play. And since we don't get a lot of these characters so far on the Dawn of X, who are these young mutants that show up in that scene? Well, we see Rockslide, Anole, and Loa. They're all mutants created in the early 2000s in a relaunched New Mutants. Rockslide is the Thing, if he could blow up and reassemble his rock bits. Anole is kind of Spider-Man meets Nightcrawler meets Serpent Society. And Loa is Kitty Pryde meets Namor. But again, they're all like young teenage X-Men, and I'm really happy to see Hickman and crew integrate more mutants into this narrative. I think there are so many mutants that fans of X-Men who maybe were huge fans circa the 80s or huge fans circa the 90s even, and have come back via House and Powers. There are so many mutants to learn about and to know about now that have been in these like often very interesting, fun, new kind of waves of mutants that have come throughout the 2000s. So even if the comics weren't like, holistically fantastic, there are good characters and there are good storylines in there that you may have missed. I'm interested in seeing more of them integrated, like intentionally and smartly throughout the X-Men universe. So next up in X-Men number 12, the Krakoan reads summoned. And again, there was a translation in the version I read, which to me says, come on, let the people translate. Let the people translate the Krakoan. From what I can tell, X-Men number 12 should prelude us pretty directly into Ten of Swords event. Obviously, the cover here by Lionel Francis Hugh, one of my favorite covers of his, is the summoner having summoned apparently lots of very cool demons, including like three-eyed wolves and snake things and all sorts of creatures, right? So we know the summoner is going to go back to Arakko. He is one of the 10 sword bearers per the the solicits that Marvel has released for the event. He's not seemingly going to be on the side of the X-Men, but neither is probably Apocalypse, which is where we're going, right? So if you don't know the first thing about Ten of Swords, I got a lot of coverage here on Krakin Krakoa. I recommend you check out the Krakin Krakoa playlist and some of the videos I've done recently around this topic to explain it. But the summoner, I think we're going to see him allied with Apocalypse, and we're going to see what it is that they actually have planned for this major event where they have this kind of like alternate dimension and reality that is all very much in some way going to impact Krakoa. So I'm excited to see it. This was kind of a nice just Magneto showcase and a little breath before we get there. But it was it was solid. It was solid. They're not huge major revelations, but some interesting threads as well. So I'm Dave. Again, you can find my stuff at patreon.com/comicbookherald. If you are so inclined, you have thoughts on the comics here and theories or things you'd like to see next in videos or, just like topics I should cover, hit me up in the comments here on the YouTube channel. That would be awesome. And I love seeing the good ideas and good theories that people have around X-Men comics and the world of Marvel. So again, you can find me at comicbookherald.com, at comicbookherald online. Look for the best comics ever and My Marvelous Year podcasts for more. And thanks everybody for listening. As always, enjoy the comics.